I'd like to thank Eddie's family for asking me to speak today. Thank you very much. It's certainly an honor to be up here. It was good to see Greg Greenway here today. Haven't seen him in many years. So good to see Greg. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming today to help celebrate the life of Eddie House.
Amen.
And there's quite a crowd here today. That says a lot about the kind of person that he was. Mike Dent he was predicting that there would be a large crowd here today, and there he is. And he said that everybody in Stuttgart knew Snookie, and that is true. He was well known, but just because people know who you are doesn't necessarily mean they'll come to your funeral. So that says a lot about Snookie. And on Facebook, everybody's on Facebook these days, social media. I read countless nice comments about Snookie after he passed away. There was one, I don't know if Kenny Hill was here today, but Kenny Hill had the best comment, I thought, that summed it up the best. And he said, if you knew him, you loved him. And how true is that? I read this quote the other day and immediately thought of Eddie. And this is the way it goes, that everyone has a friend during each stage of their life, but only the lucky ones have the same friend in all stages of their life. And I was lucky to have Eddie in all stages of my life. Good friend of me. I have so many good times and stories I could share. It's just hard to narrow them down to something like this, to a few minutes to narrow them down. But one thing he loved to do was to make people laugh. And he had a smile and a joke for everyone he met. And he never met a stranger. He was brought into this world, John Edward House, but most of us always knew him as Snookie. Eddie's dad was known as Snookie, but as far back as I can remember, everyone knew him, called him Snookie. And from here on out, I'm going to refer to him as Snookie and not Eddie. He was the sixth of 9 children, and I always remember the House family. They were so close. There was a lot of love in the House family, and still is today. Snookie and I have been friends for over 60 years. I met Snookie at Burkle Street Elementary School, and we went to school together all 12 years. And just being honest here, neither of us particularly excelled in the classroom, but we did very well on the playground and exceptionally well in the lunchroom. Snookie and I always had a close race for who could tip the scales the highest. We shared a love for food, among other things, and it showed. But I bet Snookie has already enjoyed some fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and gravy at his new home in heaven. And you think about that, how good is the food going to be in heaven?
Man.
It's going to be good. But Snookie grew up a few blocks from John Kane Park. And the park was just a magical place back then when we were kids. And back in those days, kids played outside. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have video games or 1,000 channels on TV. And thank goodness we didn't have cell phones so our parents could keep up with where we were and what we were doing. But we'd ride our bikes from all over town to go to the park, and it was just a great place to meet and play with our friends. And we did a lot of swimming and playing baseball, football, any number of things. And I just have a lot of good memories of Snookie at the park. And I know a lot of you guys here are the same way. I'm going to see how many of you folks here today really knew Snookie as a kid. And I want you to raise your hand or say amen, because we are in a Baptist church here, and I can tell a lot of you are Baptists by the large number that are at the back of the church. There's some empty seats up here, so we'll move closer. But for that, I'll ask you to raise your hand or say amen if you knew that Snookie had an accident that involved a bicycle and a tow. And I see several hands going, several hands. Okay, for those of you who do not know, yes, Snookie was riding a bicycle barefooted and managed to get his big toe caught between the chain and the sprocket and severed his big toe. And now I want to do some fact checking here. Well, I got Kevin and Troy and some others that may have know the real story. I want to know if this was fact or fiction. But Snookie always told me that they went back to the scene to get the toe to maybe have it sewed back on. But a dog had beat him to the So is that true or? No telling.
That's what they say.
As he would say, if you don't believe me, just ask me.
All right, we're going to mark it up as truth. But Snookie and I played football from Pee Wee through high school, and I just about forgotten this, but a friend reminded me that his Pee Wee coach, he was smart enough, and I don't know that we don't need to get him up on the hill, Fayetteville, but he used Snookie as a running back. You remember that, Derek? All right. Redbirds, there you go. But anyway, he used Snookie as a running back, and now Snookie was a man amongst boys in grade school days. We didn't know him back then. He was a big kid, and most of the kids were hard to tackle was an understatement for the typical skinny kid on those teams. But we played later on in junior high and high school football teams. And his running backs were long gone at that point, his running back days, and we were both linemen. And in practice, the coaches would line us up in drills or whatever, scrimmages. I'd always be across the line from Snookie. And we pounded on each other every day in practice, but we were always friends at the end of the day. Had good times then. His brother Troy had told me that after he got out of high school, he worked at R&W Construction. I about forgot this, but he took Agri in high school and learned how to weld, and he worked at R&W for a while. And then he worked in the store at Sherwin-Williams. I didn't know that, but he eventually started his own painting business. And they told me he worked for his uncle Butch Rutherford, which I knew Butch too. And that's where he kind of learned how to paint while he's still in school, learned the basics. And Snookie became a very good painter, and he was a self-employed painting contractor for about 40 years, I'd say, roughly. And he had a reputation for doing quality work. And he may not have done things the fastest way, but he did it the right way. He always did it the right way. He did it the best way he knew how. And he knew that a quality job was the key to a successful business. He must have been doing something right. He did it for 40 years, right? And he knew that making a fast buck on an inferior job would probably get you unemployed. So he was a good painter, and a lot of people used him. All right, Snookie, kind of the next chapter here, Snookie loved music, and so do I. Snookie was the road manager, for lack of a better term, for the local rock band Medusa. And he was a big part of the band for almost the entire existence of the band. And that was about 20 years, from 1970 to 1990. I was part of that band much of the time. He was not the full-time singer with the band, but there were many times he would pick up a mic and sing along. And sometimes to liven up the crowd, he would dance too. And I'm going to ask for another show of hands, or an amen, whichever you want to do. Has anyone here today witnessed Snookie do the funky chicken? All right, we got a few hands here. That's an image that I will never be able to get out of my mind. Not that I want to, but Snookie could do the funky chicken and bring the house down. A trait that Snookie owned was loyalty. He would do anything to help the band, and I mean anything. He never missed a practice or a gig, and for many years the band would practice on Sundays. This is something I thought of, and he would always, most of the time he'd grill burger, he'd grill stuff for us, or if it was bad weather, he'd have sandwiches or whatever. But he'd always feed us and always looked out for us, took care of us. He was always the first to come to anything and the last to leave, and he was all business too. And I'll admit that some of us in the band like to have fun and may have partied just a little too much every now and then. Okay, a few of us partied way too much. But Snookie did not. And y'all may not know this, but I could never remember one time in all the years I knew Snookie that he was not in control of himself. I'm not sure exactly when Snookie and Donna got married, but it was about the mid-'80s. And they had a son, Jacob. We got to visit with Jacob and his wife last night. And a few years later, Sissy came along. And Donna left Snookie and the kids not long after Sissy was born. And remember how I was talking about how loyal Snookie was? Well, he was always loyal to his children, too.
Amen.
Very loyal. Snookie raised those kids himself while running a painting business and being part of the band, but he never complained about the situation. He manned up and did what he had to do. His main goal in life was to take care of his kids and do it the best he could. And in my opinion, he did a great job of being both dad and mom. And there were other people who helped him with the kids at times, but he was always there for you. We loved you guys very much. And he raised those kids in church too. Our paths once again crossed at Harmony Baptist Church. He was always faithful to be at church, and he was always faithful to bring kids too. He loved to sing there, and he sang every chance he got, I promise you. He never turned down a chance to pick up the microphone. Somewhere down the line, Snookie figured out he could write songs. Now, how he figured that out, I don't know. But he wrote a lot of songs through the years. And Keith was well, we were just talking about that. He mostly wrote gospel songs, and he loved to sing them. And he always had the dream of hitting it big one day by selling one of his songs to an Alan Jackson or something like that. But it never happened. But it wasn't because he didn't try. And it's hard to make it big when you live in the music business, when you live in Stuttgart, Arkansas, and you have to work to make ends meet to support your family. But he certainly gave it his best shot. And I have to admire him for that. But my family moved to Cabot in 2003, and we didn't see each other as often after I moved, but we'd always stayed in touch, and usually by phone. And if I see my phone light up and Snookie calling me, I would not answer it if I didn't have at least an hour to talk. And I wouldn't call the same way. I wouldn't call him unless I had an hour, because there's not a short conversation with Snookie. And before that conversation was over, too, he was going to sing me the last song that he wrote, too. Sounds like several people have gotten the same thought. But after all the years of hard work, painting and everything, started taking a toll on Snookie's body the past few years. And then he had the bad stroke that landed him in the ICU at the Baptist Hospital, and that was in December of 2021. And I went there to see him in the ICU. And to be honest with you, I did not think that he would live to get out of that hospital that first time I saw him. But somehow he fought and scratched and clawed and got himself out of that hospital. And he went to Crest Park for a while, but I'm so thankful that Sissy found a way. I'm thankful for her stepping up to take care of him after the stroke.
Amen.
Snookie took good care of her when she was little, and she returned the favor by bringing him into her home to take care of him.
Amen.
And this was no easy task. I don't know, most of y'all probably know, but this time he was paralyzed on one side. He'd had a leg amputated. He was on a feeding tube, had multiple problems. And somehow she found a way to take care of him while she was taking care of her 4 kids too, and herself. So,
Amen.
My hat is off to you, Sissy. Thank you so much. It definitely brightened his life the last day of his life. Snookie House was a good man, and he was an honest man. And he was a self-made man, too. He worked hard for everything he had. And I never knew him to have a single enemy. He loved his family, he loved his friends, and he also loved the Lord. He lived his life to the fullest, and the large number of people here today tells you the many lives that he touched. I know Snookie had a personal relationship with the Lord. It's something I talked to him about many times through the years. And Troy told me that he talked to him just the Friday before he passed away, just to make sure that he had everything in order. And Snookie told him that he's been saved since 1962. He could go back to the exact time and place, probably could give you the date. But I have no doubt that Snookie is in heaven today. He's singing a new song.
Amen.
He's got no more pain, no more sorrow, only tears of joy. And today we're sad to lose him here on this earth, but we're all happy for him being in his new heavenly home. And I look forward to seeing him again one day.
Amen.
Thank you for letting me come up here today.